Good morning, I'm Danny Laurel. It is Thursday, the 26th of February, bringing you Morning Matters because your mornings matter. Let's get to the stories that matter today. Malacanang is dismissing the so-called money delivery scheme as a, quote, lousy script and a recycled lie aimed at smearing the president. The denial comes as Senator Amy Marcos pushes for a legislative probe, arguing that the gravity of the allegations requires a transparent and serious investigation. Protesters gathered across the country yesterday to commemorate 4 decades since the historic EDSA People Power Revolution. But following the recent mobilizations, what lies ahead for the trillion peso march movement? We will discuss the movement's next steps with co-convener Kiko D. That's later in the program. And the Senate Committee on Ethics is set to investigate Senator Dela Rosa after a civil society group accused him of neglecting his legislative duties. Senate President Tito Soto, pro tempore Tito Soto, meanwhile rejected proposals to shut down the senator's office, maintaining that staff operations must continue despite the legislator's physical absence. Welcome to our program, Morning Matters, where we talk about the issues you need to know for the rest of your day. Now, first on the agenda, new allegations of a supposed money delivery scheme involving former military personnel and high-profile officials are now drawing the attention of lawmakers. Senator Amy Marcos has filed a resolution seeking a Senate investigation into the claims, even as Malacanang and several personalities strongly deny the accusations. Here's that report.
Of the 18 individuals who introduced themselves as former soldiers and Marines allegedly serving as political bagmen, most were reportedly dishonorably discharged from service. Based on official records, the Philippine Navy confirmed that the majority were removed from service under dishonorable conditions, while some were able to retire in good standing. The Navy also clarified that 2 of the individuals were never members of the Philippine Navy or the Philippine Marine Corps. According to Attorney Levy Baligod, this was also reflected in the affidavits of the individuals.
The 18 never claimed that all of them belong to the Marine Corps. 2 of them, in fact, in the affidavit, in my possession, claimed that they were former Army.
However, during an interview with Storycon, Baligod appeared to backtrack on some of his earlier statements. He insisted that he never said $2 million had been sent to the International Criminal Court from the alleged bagmen.
There is nothing in the affidavit, and also I did not say anything that the $2 million went to the ICC.
But in the press conference a day earlier, Baligod said the bagmen were allegedly instructed to exchange the contents of 2 suitcases, each containing 56 million pesos into US dollars, equivalent to about $2 million. He earlier claimed that the money was being prepared for the arrival of foreigners, later identified as ICC investigators.
Ang sabi ng mga executive assistants ni Ginoong Saldico ay pinaghahandaan daw nila ang pagdating ng foreigners. At kalaunan ay nakilala ng mga ito na ang foreigners na binabanggit ay mga ICC investigators.
Baligod also maintained that money was allegedly given to former Senator Antonio Trillanes in connection with the ICC investigation into the case of former President Rodrigo Duterte, though he did not specify the amount. He further alleged that accommodations and expenses of certain individuals were paid for, which he described as corruption and bribery. Trillanes has already denied the accusations. Malacanang has also dismissed the claims, including allegations that suitcases of money were delivered to President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. The palace said it's leaving the matter to the NBI and PNP for investigation.
Lousy script, hindi pang award-winning. Hindi malinis, alam mo na may kasinungalingan.
Also named as an alleged recipient of money was MMDA General Manager Nicolas Torre III, who was reserved comment pending proof.
Kasi hindi nga natin alam kung yan ay kaya nilang isubstantiate at tataasan nila ng kamay para sila ay mag-subscribe dyan.
Meanwhile, Senator Amy Marcos has filed a resolution seeking a Senate investigation.
Kung may paratang, ilatag ninyo ng malinaw. Kung may ebidensya, ilabas ninyo ng buong tapang. Kumbaga sa maleta, mananatiling sikreto ang laman niyan kung hindi ilalatag sa lamesa at bubuksan. Dito natin buksan sa Senado at suriin ang maleta ng katotohanan. Hindi maaring trial by publicity ang mangyari.
Lawmakers have strongly denied allegations by a group of supposed former Marines that they received suitcases of cash. Among those named was ML Party List Representative Laila De Lima, who called the accusation a demolition job and questioned its timing amid the ICC case against former President Rodrigo Duterte and the impeachment moves against Vice President Sara Duterte. Former Makabayan lawmakers and Manila Representative Benny Abante also rejected the claims as fabricated and politically motivated. Some House leaders dismissed the allegations as baseless.
Mahirap talaga pag meron kang sariling mundo. Dilulu tawag sa mga ganyan. So, hindi natin masyado binibigyan ng pansin dahil wala naman pong katotohanan doon. So, yun lang po. Huwag tayong dilulu.
It's all BS. I'm sorry. They don't even deserve a decent response from me. But what I can tell you is those who are behind their supposed press con, they have not achieved anything but present themselves as National Marites Council.
Meanwhile, various groups and organizations held protests across the country on February 25th to mark the anniversary of the EDSA People Power Revolution, the peaceful revolt that restored Philippine democracy 40 years ago. Mobile journalist Arles de los Santos with this story.
The EDSA People Power Revolution ended former President Ferdinand Marcos Sr.'s 2-decade-long dictatorship. Unlike in the past administrations, this year's anniversary is again simply being observed as a special working day. No holiday declaration nor special observance from the late dictator's namesake, now President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. But this did not stop various groups in remembering the peaceful revolution. Rallies were held across the country, including one at the EDSA Shrine, organized by Bayan and other progressive groups. As it was in 1986, people are still protesting the same issue, corruption.
Hanggang ngayon po, 40 taon na ang nakaraan, nandito pa rin ang korupsyon, nandito rin po ang paghihirap ng bayan, kaya importante po na may pasa na po ang anti-dynasty bill.
Sana po ay mabuhay muli yung diwa ng people power kung saan inangkin ng taong bayan ang kapangyarihan dito sa ating bansa. Inangkin natin ang responsibilidad na maging parte sa solusyon sa ating bayan dahil yun po ang kailangan natin gawin sa isang demokrasya.
The groups reenacted historic scenes from 1986 like the salubong of then Defense Chief Juan Ponce Enrile and AFP Vice Chief of Staff Fidel Ramos before marching towards the People Power Monument where the Trillion Peso March movement held its own program. Wednesday's EDSA commemoration was generally peaceful, except for a brief scuffle between bayan-led protesters and the police. Authorities barred the group from bringing a track platform as they marched towards the EDSA Shrine.
Ang problema, pagtipo namin kanina ayaw na pumayag ng pulis kasi bawal daw ang truck sa EDSA. Kaya sabi namin, ayun naman ang usapan namin kahapon. Sabi namin, mas magulo. Kung hayaan nyo lang basta pumasok ang tao na walang stage, walang sound system, eh yun daw ang utos na nasa taas. Kaya ito nangyari. Naparahan natin ang matigas na hindi naman dapat. At ngayon, naghahabol ng pulis, bakit daw hindi ilagay ang stage? Eh sinaulo pa na sila ang nagbawal ng stage. Diba? Malinaw lang usapan.
Students from various universities also took part in this year's EDSA commemoration. Those from the Polytechnic University of the Philippines in Santa Mesa walked out of their classes to join the rallies along EDSA. The 40th anniversary of the EDSA revolution ended with a program at the People Power Monument. As for the palace, there was no message from the president. But Palace Press Officer Claire Castro said President Marcos remains open to studying proposals to declare February 25 as a holiday again.
It's part of the history. Hindi ito mabubura. Hindi mabubura kung anong naganap noon, ang katapangan ng mga Pilipino, ang pagtanggap sa pangyayari. Hindi po yan mabubura sa history.
Kapatid Arles de los Santos, We are One News.
Don't go away. We will be back with more stories after this quick break. Good morning, I'm Danny Laurel, and here on Morning Matters, we talk about the most pressing issues and give you the context behind the headlines. As we know, the third edition of the Trillion Peso March was held yesterday, February 25th, and that coincided with the commemoration of the 40th anniversary of the EDSA People Power Revolution. Several groups marched from the EDSA Shrine to the People Power Monument, where a program was conducted. And just like in 1986, people continued to protest the same issue, corruption. Joining us now is Kiko Aquino D, the co-convener of Tindig Pilipinas, to talk about the third Trillion Peso March. Good morning, Kiko.
Hi, good morning, Paul. Good morning to all of our viewers today.
Kiko, let's just assess the participation of this third Trillion Peso March, which of course coincides with the 40th anniversary of the EDSA Revolution. It was not declared a public holiday, but some students even walked out of their classrooms to rally on the streets. What is your assessment? Was the participation strong? And how was the feel for you? Did we achieve anything yesterday?
So I think in terms of participation, I am still waiting for our formal reports on the participants. From where I was standing, which is in the stage, so that's not really the best point of view. It did feel similar to yung November 30 Trillion Peso March, which is what we set out to do. And then in terms of the feel, I think the salubong that was featured in your report is really something else to see that firsthand, being one of the people giving flowers. And I think it really set the tone very well for the rest of the afternoon's program. And it was this idea of the coming together of noon, ngayon, and bukas in terms of our collective struggles. And it's also like the humble acknowledgement that we still haven't gotten rid of the ills that were faced during the Marcos dictatorship, but we're sort of all in this together, all generations, to confront them going forward.
That's exactly what would color my next question. No? You have people actually saying, did we achieve much since the 1986 revolution, right? 40 years on, we are dealing with the exact same issues. Some even worse than before. You have a former president now in trial, or at least in a pre-trial at the ICC. You've got another Marcos in power, which is what exactly led to the 1986 revolution. And then this trillion peso corruption scandal. Tell us your take on that. How could the people have hope in this rally?
Right. So I've always believed that hope is a choice. No, that's not something that should be affected by what's going on around you. It's just a decision to act. No, in terms of what People Power achieved, I think the main achievement is that we're still a democracy. No, that no matter how bad things get in this country, there's an election always on the horizon where we can sort of turn our backs on what's going on. And there's also this right to protest where we always can, with a loud voice, say something when we see something going wrong. No? And I think even you mentioned the ICC working. I don't see a scenario where we're part of the ICC and people can have access to this kind of justice if it weren't for a people power revolution that displaced a dictator. But all of that being said, you're also correct to say that the crises that we're facing right now are worse than they were during the Marcos dictatorship, the corruption, the human rights abuses. And I think because we're in a democracy, that means that it's not just the ones in power that are responsible for addressing these crises. It's something that we all have to do, and the Trillion Peso March is part of that. A lot of these volunteer efforts that we're seeing on the corruption issue are also part of that. And while it wasn't the focus of the march yesterday, definitely the election in 2028 is part of that as well.
How can we shift now from awareness and protest to real action and accountability in government?
I still think that the protests won't go away if the government continues to sort of evade some very important questions that are being raised. Like, again, I in my personal assessment, the significant questions about the Marcos government's involvement in corruption aren't really being raised by the most credible people. I'll grant that. No, so Zaldico, the text messages that are alleged to be held by Leandro Leviste, and then this last sort of press conference by Mike Defensor. No, that being said, just because the people raising them are not credible doesn't mean it shouldn't be given due course, right? So I think a very important next step is I think we need to have a venue where these things can be investigated properly. And I think one of, in my view, that venue could be the Independent People's Commission Bill, the Independent Commission Against Infrastructure Corruption Bill, which is one of the calls of the 3rd trillion peso march. So I think the people need to go out and protest, sort of demand that the government sort of opens itself up to accountability. But again, beyond that, there have been a lot of volunteer efforts spearheaded by the church to help in the ground assessment of these infrastructure projects. There have been many regular people who've sort of tipped the media off to different controversies in their particular communities that led to, for instance, a lot of what we know now about the corruption behind Zaldico. So there's a lot of ways that people can get involved. No, whether this will sort of end up getting rid of corruption, I think the election is another very important next step, right? To organize around that and make sure we kick out these people who have repeatedly done offenses against the country. But beyond, in the meantime, I think these volunteer efforts alongside these protest efforts are really important to keep our eyes on the ball of corruption.
I'm not sure how old you are and whether you were present in 1986. I was 3 months old right then. But how was the turnout of the youth, and how angry are the youth in the next generation, and what were they specifically calling for? Do they even understand these terms, martial law, never again, Marcos in power? What is the sentiment of the youth right now?
So I was -5 at EDSA po. So I was there. That's why I was in the youth side of as the oldest person on the youth side of the salubungan of our group. But the youth understand. No? So my reflection is that I think definitely with me personally, because of my family background, the terms people power and EDSA are very resonant. No? And for me, they invoke a lot of feelings, and I feel they're still quite powerful. But I understand that maybe people my age, and maybe even more so people who are maybe a generation younger than me, the Gen Z, who are like the majority of the youth now. Definitely, at least from what I can tell, the majority of the youth that attended our program. It's possible that the term people power doesn't resonate, right? It's possible that the term EDSA doesn't resonate, but that sense of responsibility, that sense of taking charge when the people in power aren't really serving the interests of the people anymore. That sense of taking responsibility on ourselves. I was surprised to see much younger people than me arrive at that much earlier on in life than I did. So I think in terms of the terms evoking the same emotions, maybe not, although I think we were maybe successful in drawing that link between people power and the collective action that that Gen Z and younger activists do now. So I think we were successful in making that connection, but even more important than that connection, I think, is whether the term is people power or not, the spirit of collective action is still alive very much in the younger generation.
And I have to say, you are an Aquino, and this is deeply personal to you, as it is to me as well. How can you separate politics here in your role as the head of or co-convener of Tindig Pilipinas? How are you able to separate politics from true accountability in the current government?
I think that's three things that need to be separated. No, that's the walang kulay ang politika, ang corruption. So that's the accountability side. There is the political side and all of the things going on between parties, which definitely I believe in sort of partisan action as well. And then there's the personal side, which is I have very strong feelings whether or not corruption was happening, whether or not the whether or not I'm supporting a particular partisan position. And I think the reality is that you're just one person. No? You can't truly separate all of those things. And I leave it to the wisdom of the different groups, the different coalitions that ask me to represent them to see whether, again, I cannot go into any sort of issue without bringing my personal story into it, right? So it's up to, I think, our collective wisdom of the different groups I'm part of to see if that story is particularly helpful. And I think as successful as I think that People Power was, or the People Power commemoration this 40th anniversary was, it was also a bit of a struggle to just as an example of this. No, I think I was in way too many conversations this People Power anniversary about how yellow it should be, which was
Yes.
a tough position for me kasi on the one hand I recognize the kung walang kulay ang corruption and white has been the common color of the Trillion Peso March, but on the other hand the Kino legacy is sort of probably the thing I'm most proud of in my life, and I never want to see us distancing myself from that. So honestly, it's a struggle, right? It's a struggle, and I think every person has some variation of that struggle because every person has some personal stake in our politics, and we muddle through it as best we can.
What's interesting, actually, I was searching on Tindig. It's actually a coalition that started during the Duterte administration in opposition to the EJK, no? And right now, finally, you are seeing some action happening. Give us your thoughts on that and what you feel that this coalition of different NGOs during the Duterte period has achieved as we follow this pre-trial at the ICC.
Right. So, yes, correct. No? So, Tindig came together in 2017 and definitely as an anti-Duterte administration, but also notably composed of a lot of anti-Marcos forces from the EDSA period, or if not those people themselves, a lot of the groups that sprang after the sort of fall of the dictatorship and in this democratic space that was created during that time. So I think it's very clear that Tindig's character is very much opposed to President Duterte. But when you see corruption emerging in a different administration, even if it's one that finds itself opposed with President Duterte, even though for the majority of Marcos and Duterte's time I'm not sure about the majority of their time, but for the longest time before the last few years, Marcos and Duterte were aligned. I think it makes sense that we're sort of calling out both of these administrations where we can, right? So in terms of what's going on in the ICC, definitely I think that's something that we're very supportive of it, and I think that's too weak language to support like what people in Tindig really felt. I remember the day that President Duterte was arrested almost a year ago. A lot of us dropped everything, met up just to be with each other in that moment, which was viewed as a real milestone in the struggles that we had against the human rights abuses with President Duterte. And more importantly, we were very blessed to be invited by Father Flavio Villanueva to a mass that he had for the victims of EJKs. And I wasn't that active, or not even that active. I wasn't active at all in Tindig during the Duterte administration, but I saw there the real catharsis that EJK victims felt when the arrest happened. And I suddenly felt that maybe I should have been more active, like when I was younger, when the Duterte EJKs were happening, because these people really deserve all the support that we can give them. So I think that's this development in ICC is something that we definitely support, and again we look forward to justice finally unfolding as far as the EJKs are concerned.
Obviously, never too late. I have to ask you, after the announcement of VP Sara to run for office, the highest position in the land in 2028, what does your camp feel about a possible Marcos joining the opposition in 2028? Is that something that could be welcomed or never again?
I think that's a self-contradictory term in the sense that you can't be in the administration and suddenly be opposition. No? It's like, and it's not like VP Cyrus and the administration as well. But semantics aside, no, I think one thing I value about Tindig Pilipinas is that we're sort of allowed to voice our views and in public, and even if these views are contradictory, no, there are some in our coalition, for instance, Magdalo is part of us, and Senator Trillanes is very open about sort of broaching that idea. And I'm very open about saying that it's a bad idea. I think that the Marcos administration is the most corrupt administration we've seen post 1986. And on top of all of us sort of having at one point or another been part of that never again, never forget sort of movement against the Marcos dictatorship and against historical revisionism, I think it would be too much of a contradiction to allow such an alliance to happen going into 2028, where I think the people are, I think contrary to what you hear a lot from all sides of our politics, I actually do think that our voters are discerning. When they see a contradiction like that, there will be a punishment as far as the polls are concerned. So I'm very consistent about being against that kind of alliance. Just me personally, though, but I can't speak for the entirety of our group.
You mentioned earlier that you wish you had done more during the Duterte administration. Any plans for 2028 or in the future to push for a bigger role?
I'd like to. I am committed to campaigning tooth and nail against Sara Duterte. Right, I filed the impeachment complaint on the basis that even if 2028 weren't a factor, she isn't fit to be president, and she isn't fit to be one heartbeat away from being president as vice president. So definitely, I'm gearing up for that. I'm gearing up for that campaign, and again, I think the role that I have within Tindig, particularly because of my family background, is in this very complicated political situation, is to also make sure that President Marcos's feet is also being held to the fire. So I think I'm grateful that Tindig has found value in my performing such a role. And I think over the coming months, as we approach the election, as things get more complicated, then we'll see what that role looks like in moving forward. No? But definitely, I think I decided in 2022 that being an Aquino under a Marcos administration only makes sense if we're opposing it as vigorously as possible, and not just opposing the Marcos administration, but opposing the sort of inheritor of the human rights abuses of Marcos Sr., which in my view is Duterte. So definitely I have a role, but the role I'm playing now is very different from the role I had last year within Tindig, and it's definitely going to be very different again in the coming years as the election comes. So yeah, I'm just looking forward to seeing that unfold.
We look forward to that as well, and we will get back to you on those plans. Thank you so much for your time, Tindig Pilipinas co-convener Kiko Aquino D.
Thank you very much, po, and thank you very much to all of our viewers today.
Stay tuned. Morning Matters will be back after a short break. Welcome back. You're still watching Morning Matters here on One News. A House panel is stepping up deliberations on the proposed measure that seeks to prohibit political dynasties in the country. One version is gaining traction in the lower house or chamber, with more than 100 lawmakers backing that proposal. Mobile Journal Amy Atienza reports for us.
The House Suffrage and Electoral Reforms Committee looks further into the House Bill 6771 prohibiting political dynasties in the country, filed by House Speaker Bogie D. III and Majority Leader Sandra Marcos. Under this bill, spouses and other covered relatives are not allowed from simultaneously holding electoral positions under the same area. According to committee chairperson Zia Alonto Adiong, the bill already has 144 authors as of date.
Yung House Bill 6771, which is the version authored by Speaker Faustino Bogie D. III and our Majority Leader, has the most number of co-authors. Mukhang 100 plus na sila co-authors nito. So, kung titingnan po natin kung sino yung may suporta talaga at sino talaga yung may backing, itong House Bill 6771.
So far, I think our group will agree that the best approach is House Bill 6771, Speaker Bogie and Majority Leader Sandro Marcos, because it is congruent with the constitutional intent, but at the same time, it balances it with what is the political reality and what is necessary.
Just recently, the committee held public consultations in Cavite, Cebu, and Cagayan de Oro to gather the public's perspectives on the degree of consanguinity that shall be implemented along with the anti-political dynasty bill.
There is no single uniform position. Some advocate for a better and for stricter and broader prohibition, while others emphasize safeguards for the constitutional right to vote and to seek public office. Many raised important questions about degrees of relationship, levels of ban, and enforceability.
As for the timeline, Representative Adyong assured that the committee may pass the bill before the President's 2026 State of the Nation address.
What I can tell you is under yung process po ng consolidation, at next week, magkakaroon na tayo ng political action. So, June na siya for next week na tayo.
Kapatid Amy Atienza, we are One News.
Vice President Sara Duterte became emotional at an event in Davao City and reiterated that she will run for president in 2028. Here is that report.
Vice President Sara Duterte became teary-eyed at an event organized by the Philippine Association of Local Government Accountants in Davao City on Wednesday. She was especially moved upon seeing her former colleagues at Davao City Hall.
Pagkakita na ko sa ako ang mga kauban kanian ko sa City Hall. Nostalgic ko. Na ate na ko ang kamingaw sa Davao, sa Mindanao.
She even reflected on what it would have been like if she had run for mayor instead of vice president.
Kaganina, nakauna-una ko sa ako ang kaugalingon. Kung sa kahaog, nidagan na lang ko o mayor. Wala na lang ko nidagan o vice president.
The vice president then reiterated that she will run for president in the 2028 elections.
Okay na nang pagdagan sa presidente, nagkasinabot na taan ng tanan na dapat.
In the end, VP Sara thanked the organizers for the invitation, noting that it also gave her the chance to return home and spend time with her family. For News 5, I'm Bril Montalvo. We are One News.
Meanwhile, Senator Bato Dela Rosa is now facing an ethics complaint over his prolonged absence. Anti-corruption group Wag Kang Kukorrupt filed the complaint on Wednesday. De La Rosa last attended a Senate session in November 2025.
Dahil kung ordinary yung mamamayan, kung hindi po pasok sa trabaho, hindi pa napafire, nawawalan ng trabaho. Dapat po same ethical standard nag-a-apply din sa senador.
Ethics Committee Chairman Senator J.V. Ejercito gave his assurance that they will tackle the complaint against De La Rosa. Meanwhile, Senate President Tito Soto has rejected calls to shut down De La Rosa's office.
Maraming empleyado yun, nagtatrabaho yung mga empleyado, nagsasubmit sila ng mga bills, nagsasubmit sila ng mga komentaryo nila at ng mga perspective nila about the bills that are being discussed. It could be coming from Senator Bato himself or the advisors or the legal people of Senator De La Rosa. So mahirap yun.
Don't go away, more matters to discuss after this break. Keep it here on One News. Welcome back. You're still watching Morning Matters here on One News. Now, following the allegations made by a group of supposed former Marines about an alleged money delivery scheme, those accused are now pushing back, calling the claims fabricated and politically motivated. Joining us now is former ACT Teachers Party List Representative Franz Castro, one of the personalities named in that alleged delivery scheme. Good morning, Rep. Welcome to the program.
Good morning. Magandang bye-bye.
Rep, your reaction to this?
Hello?
Yes. Your reaction, ma'am, to being included in one of the alleged receivers of this money delivery scheme. What was your reaction when you saw your name in the list?
Of course, we denied na allegations o the 18 Marines, no, at nakasama kami. This is a wholesale, no, na tingin natin pagdadawit sa mga pangalan ng mga makabayan. And as you can see in the list, these are members, active members of the Quadcom. Investigating and in the committee of the government and accountability in the confidential funds of Duterte.
Yes, ma'am. I think you're breaking a little bit, but you mentioned that you vehemently denied these allegations. Who do you believe would benefit from such claims? Because from the list pa lang, you have everyone from the president to admin supporters to opposition such as yourself. So sino kaya ang magbebenepisyo dito sa listahang to?
Well, sa nakita natin, mga miyembro ng Quadcom na aktibo, no, doon sa investigation sa EJK at saka doon sa Committee on Good Government na investigate the confidential fund. So, sa ganito, sige natin, mga Duterte at mga Duterte supporter ang gumawa nito.
Bakit kaya po, ano pong makakamit nila at this point in time by doing this, especially as it coincides with Vice President Sara's bid for 2028 as well as former President Rodrigo Duterte's pre-trial at the ICC? Ano kayang ma-achieve nila if you say that you believe the Dutertes are behind this?
Well, it's obvious, no? Yung sources ay mga Duterte supporters, no? At obvious din naman na gusto nilang i-discredit yung ICC at nire-relate nila politically motivated ito. Gumagawa na ng narrative na itong mga nangyayaring ito ay politically motivated. At siyempre, gusto rin na rin nilang siraan din yung mga biktima ng EJK, no? At saka yung ginagawang investigasyon sa EJK. At ito rin, napipinto din yung impeachment hearing ni Vice President Duterte. Kaya talagang dinidiscredit din nila yung mga kongresista na aktibo na lumahok dun sa unang impeachment.
Worth it bang i-pursue itong allegations, ma'am, and to clear all of your names? Or do you all feel na wag na nating pansinin ito? There are some that have said they will file some cyber libel cases.
So, as far as the Makabayan is concerned, yung tatlo kami, no, since this is unsigned statement, ay hindi namin gaanong pinahalagahan ito, no? Kung ito iakyat nila sa ombudsman, so it's their choice. Pero tingin natin, mas mahalaga yung dinadivert kasi, no, dinidistract yung attention natin doon sa mga mahalagang issue ng impeachment ni Sara Duterte, itong nangyayaring hearing sa ICC, yung pre-trial hearing, at saka yung mga iba pang mga bills na like yung political dynasty. Kaya talagang sa amin ay less of our concern itong unsigned statement na ito.
Can you confirm, Rep, that you will not seek cyber libel charges or similar?
Well, alam niyo naman ang makabayan, we are very critical of the law on cyber libel. Kasi meron ka itong cyber libel, at hindi natin dahil nga doon sa freedom of expression. Kaya siguro ibang kaso kung sakali na mapag-isipan ng aming mga abogado, ano yung kasong pwede namin gamitin.
Meron bang bearing at this stage po in terms of your duties or what you can achieve because of these alleged because of these allegations, or you feel na wala naman maiiba sa araw-araw na trabaho ninyo?
Wala naman, wala namang makaka-apekto, In fact, nag-ready kami sa impeachment ni Sara Duterte. Magkakaroon na ng initial na hearing sa justice. At ito rin, yung sa ICC ay nakafocus din kami, doon sa pagtulong sa mga victims. At yung aming mga yung aming mga abogado, na active din doon sa ICC ay wala naman ding bearing ito. At tuloy-tuloy naman yung mga ginagawa namin sa Makabayan.
Let's pivot towards that conversation of the ICC confirmation of charges hearing currently ongoing. How are you satisfied so far with the prosecution? Are you confident that this will be going to a full trial? And your reaction also on former President Duterte not being present in the chambers?
Well, so far, for the last 2 days, ng confirmation of charges, the prosecutor are did very well doon sa kanilang mga presentation noong kanilang ng charges. Tingin natin this will push through to a full trial. Nakikita natin naman na very confident yung mga prosecutor at nakita doon talaga na systematic at merong policy talaga ng Duterte administration, yung mga AJK, dahil may mga may mga memo yan. At yung hindi pagdalo naman ni Duterte, well, it's his right, pinayagan naman siya ng ICC. Tingin natin na meron namang reasons yung ICC para payagan siyang hindi dumalo. Pero siguro sa trial, dapat dumalo siya.
Ma'am, are you actively looking into the possible arrests of the other people that were named, the 8 people that were named during the, not yesterday, but the day before during the hearings? What can be done, especially to our sitting senators?
Well, hindi ako privy kung merong ganyan, kung merong warrant of arrest, pero I hope na maaresto rin sila dahil nga sila yung co-perpetrator hindi lang naman si former President Duterte yung gumawa noong kailangan merong co-perpetrator at yun ang in-establish ng prosecutor for the last 2 days.
Ma'am, let's pivot towards the impeachment cases, the 4 impeachment cases filed against VP Sara. You mentioned you're looking at that, especially that's going to be March 2 to determine whether that is going to continue. Meron pong mga analysts na nagsasabi that she deliberately made her announcement for the presidential bid during this time to possibly sway the votes against the continuation of this impeachment. Ano po yung sentiment dyan sa lower house? Is it possible that for political motivations, this impeachment will not be pushing through because there's a big possibility she might become president?
Yes, in our observation, baka makaapekto nga ito. Pero I believe that those congressmen who believe talaga na dapat siyang ma-impeach will uphold their vote for the impeachment of Sara Duterte. So we are confident naman, no, at least 1/3 makuha natin, no, para ma-impeach si Sara Duterte. So marami naman talaga dyan ang mga congressmen na talagang naninindigan.
So you're confident po na this will continue to a full-fledged impeachment trial? After March 2?
Yes, oo. Confident kami dahil nga nakita naman natin yung mga observations natin sa mga congresspersons natin na kasama noon.
Can you compare this po with the impeachment case that was filed against President BBM? Bakit po ito na-dismiss kaagad?
Well, questionable sa amin yung pagkaka-dismiss agad noong impeachment ni BBM, no, dahil kina-question natin yung dinagdag ng committee doon sa rules, no, na doon pa lang sa recital of charges ay nilagay na doon na dapat mayroong mga evidences, etc. Doon pa sana yun sa sunod na stage. Kung yun din yung gagawin ay tinitignan natin na ready naman yung kami na ma-present agad yung sinasabing mga evidences.
Yun na nga po, moving forward, what steps should the government take or the institutions in government to ensure accountability and protection, especially in politicized situations like these where we are dealing with two high officials of the land and the elections are in 2 years. How can we ensure na hindi po magiging political issue ito and it's really going to tackle the issues at hand?
Well, I think if the evidences are concrete, no, yung mga nakita naman natin, yung for example in our impeachment complaint, betrayal of public trust yan. We already have these evidences, no, mula pa nung nagkaroon ng mga investigation in Quadcom at saka yung Committee on Good Government, ay nandiyan na yung mga evidences, no, from COA, no, and other offices. Kaya confident kami na sana ay sa evidences tumingin yung mga kongresista at hindi sa kanilang political ambition.
All right, well, we will be watching that very closely. Maraming salamat po for your time, former ACT Teachers Party List Representative Franz Castro. Meanwhile, the Bureau of Customs has auctioned off 12 luxury vehicles that includes 7 owned by the Diskaya couple and 5 seized from Pogo operators. Among the highlights were a Bentley Bentayga sold for 12.17 million pesos after strong bidding. A Lincoln Navigator went for 6.95 million pesos, while a 2022 Cadillac Escalade was bought for 6.62 million pesos and will be displayed in a Benguet museum. Customs said the successful auction signals continued efforts to recover alleged ill-gotten wealth, with more luxury vehicles possibly set for auction soon.
Ang nagiging trend is parang third time's a charm. Tuwing third auction, doon may mas ganado silang magbid, no? Siguro substantially reduced kasi yung price. So siguro that's the trend that we'll have to study kung ano ang magiging movement natin moving forward.
And in sports, Gilas Pilipinas faces a tough test as it takes on New Zealand in the second window of the FIBA World Cup Asian qualifiers. The Nationals are eyeing a 3-0 record in group. That's after sweeping Guam in the opening window. A win against the Tall Blacks would move Gilas closer to the next round of the qualifiers. But it won't be easy as New Zealand is looking to bounce back. That's after 2 close losses to Australia. Gilas, meanwhile, will be playing without injured big man Kai Soto. The tip-off is at 7:30 tonight at the SM Mall of Asia Arena over in Pasay City. And the UST Golden Tigresses finally notched their first win in the UAAP Season 88 Women's Volleyball Tournament. They overcame the Ateneo Blue Eagles in straight sets, with Angie Poyos leading the way with a game high of 21 points. Meanwhile, the DLSU Lady Spikers continued their hot start to the season with another commanding victory, sweeping the UP Fighting Maroons in straight sets. 4 Lady Spikers scored in double digits. That was led by Angel Canino, who had 12 points. And that wraps up today's episode of Morning Matters. We hope we have given you just the right start to your morning. Let's make the day matter. I'm Danny Laurel, kapatid. We are One News, all sides, all the time.